Okay, Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Today we will continue our journey on the 13th chapter. So we will cover slokas 13.8 to 13.12. And as always, before we begin, I'll say the prayers to Guru and God, and then I'll play the Guru mantra. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna.
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः.
Hare Krishna. So you're all ready? Shall I play these slokas? Okay.
अमानित्वमदम्भित्वम् अहिंसा क्षान्तिरार्जवम् आचार्योपासनं शौचं स्थैर्यम् आत्मविनिग्रहः इन्द्रियार्थेषु वैराग्यम् अनहङ्कारमेव च जन्म मृत्युजरा व्याधि दुःखदोषानुदर्शनम् असक्तिरनभिष्वङ्गः पुत्रदारगृहादिषु नित्यं च समचित्तत्वम् इष्टानिष्टोपपत्तिषु मयि चानन्ययोगेन भक्तिरव्यभिचारिणी विविक्तदेशसेवित्वमरतिर्जनसंसदि आध्यात्मज्ञाननित्यत्वं तत्त्वज्ञानार्थदर्शनम् एतज्ज्ञानमिति प्रोक्तमज्ञानं यदतोऽन्यथा.
Hare Krishna. Who is reading today?
Me, Guruji.
Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. 13.8 Absence of pride and pretension, non-violence, forbearance, straightforwardness, service to the teacher, purity, steadiness, and self-control. 13.9 Detachment from sense objects, absence of egoism, and constant contemplation of the suffering and faults inherent in birth, death, old age, and disease. 13.10 Non-attachment, absence of a strong attachment to children, spouse, and household matters, and constant equanimity of mind in the face of desirable or undesirable outcomes. 13.11 Undivided, unwavering devotion to me, preference for solitude and distaste for worldly gatherings. 13.12 Constancy in spiritual knowledge and insight into the purpose of true knowledge. This is declared to be knowledge, and that which is contrary to this is ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we continue our journey, and it's going to get a little technical, but I think it's very important. The knowledge that Krishna is sharing is extremely transformative, and that's going to help us in our path. That's why I think I'm also going a bit deeper. So be with me, and if there are any questions, feel free. Don't leave the session with any doubts in your mind, okay? So Krishna explained the nature of the body and mind. He spoke about Kshetra, and he spoke how all the various entities, how they all interact with each other, with the world. And now Krishna is turning to the subject of true knowledge, which is jnana. So whenever Krishna says jnana, he's not talking about just chemistry or physics. When Krishna says jnana, he's talking about divine knowledge, the true, real knowledge. And here, when Krishna starts talking about what true knowledge is, he starts by talking about amanitvam. Amanitvam, anybody remembers what is amanitvam?
Basically, it's absence of pride, humility.
Excellent. Amanitvam is humility. And see, the human mind or mana, it naturally generates a sense of I. That is the function of the mind. That I is the ego. And the natural tendency of the ego is to create this illusion of superiority or self-importance. Somehow, naturally, if you all, introspect honestly, you will all realize that we all have a natural tendency to somehow feel we are somehow better, or we are more honest, or we are more hardworking, or we are more this, we are more that. Somewhere that sense of superiority comes. And self-importance. Somehow everything that is going around is about us. Right? That is the function of the mind. And why we are talking about this, most of our problems, they are rooted here. Most of our life problems, they all have the root cause in that mana, creating that illusion of I, that ego. Whenever we say we are hurt, who is hurt? It's your ego that gets hurt. Whenever we say, I don't feel accepted, or I don't feel welcome, or I don't this, I don't that, there are so many things attached to that I, you see. So that's why it helps to understand this better. And the problem that Krishna says is, as long as we don't have a grasp on this, in other words, as long as we let ourselves become controlled by ego, true divine knowledge cannot enter. He says that ego becomes the barrier. It creates the wall. That ego kind of does not let the real divine knowledge get in. That is why we need to take care of that ego for our own benefit. So in Eastern Japanese, especially philosophy, they call this emptying the cup. So they say that if you want fresh tea, you have to first throw away the stale tea that is in the cup. If the cup is already full of something stale, how can something fresh be put in that? So similarly, we discussed about this in the second chapter, where we said that if we are too full of our small I, then how can we make room for the big I? Divine knowledge, grace, everything is about the big I. Big I means the super consciousness. But if our cup is so full of the small I, which is me, then how can the big I? So that is a fundamental concept here. So you may remember we spoke about Kabir's beautiful Doha, where Kabir said, "Jab मैं था तब हरि नहीं, अब हरि है तो मैं नहीं, प्रेम गली अति सांकरी, तामे द्वय न समाही." Where he said, when I existed, in other words, the ego, then Hari was not there. There's no room for Hari. And now when Hari is here, I am not there. No, it is only Hari. You see, Hari is saying the path of divine love is very narrow. It cannot have room for both. He says you have to pick which I you want to take on the path. So beautiful, right? So that is why humility is so important, because humility means lack of pride. When pride is removed, then you make room for something divine. You make room for Hari. So in many ways, amanitvam is the foundation. It is the foundation of all other virtues. If you don't have amanitvam, none of the other virtues can really develop in us. And in the Katha Upanishad also, they say something very powerful. They say that the self cannot be realized through hearing teachings. Even when hearing, many do not understand. Wonderful is the teacher And rare is the gifted one who comprehends the self under the guidance of a teacher. So let us see why we are talking about this sloka here. Because this sloka is emphasizing that the path to wisdom, the path to realization, it requires humility and receptivity. Because when we say teacher, what does Krishna say? Pariprasnena, pranipatena, sevaya. It is all about amanitvam only. Krishna always talks about how we prepare ourselves for knowledge, divine knowledge. And that is what the Upanishad also says. That merely just reading a million books or a million quotes or listening to a million songs or watching million videos, it is all just going to remain jnana. It's not even divine knowledge. It is just going to be theoretical intellectual knowledge. You can use it to show off, but if it has to become a realization, if it has to become a vijnana, then your chemistry has to be right. So that starts with amanitvam is what Krishna is saying, and that is why I am also repeating it so many times, because Krishna thinks it's extremely important. So the way Krishna is explaining the virtues that are required, I have categorized that into foundational virtues and higher virtues. What that means is, if the foundational virtues are not present, then we cannot really build the higher virtues. First, we have to make sure that the foundational virtues are taken care of and that we build them. Make sense? Okay. So what are the foundational virtues? First one, of course, amanitvam. We just spoke about that. The second is adambitvam. Adambitvam is simplicity. No pretense. Pretense means what? Deep inside you are having all these, negative thoughts. You just don't like the other person. But when you come across as, I'm such a sweet person, I'm so saintly. You see, that is called pretense. But what is the problem with pretense? Why do you think people pretend? See, Krishna has gone very deep into the human psychology. So Krishna explains that why pretending to be somebody else or pretending to have some values that you don't really have, why people do that? They do that because they are seeking external validation. People are expecting that somebody will say you are such a nice person, or you are such a saintly person, or you are such a sweet person. So they need that validation. That validation is what makes them, become somebody else. So again, I will ask you, what is it that makes you crave for that validation? Yes.
Pride and ego.
Pride and ego. You see? So already we have seen how amanitvam is important, because otherwise adambitvam cannot come. As long as we are under the control of ego and pride, we are always going to seek external validation. And for external validation means you will always try to behave the way other people want you to behave, or other people want to see you. That is a problem here. There is a very beautiful saying that I really like, that I've quoted it in some of my other blogs and all. That saying says, it is better to be hated for what you are than to be loved for what you are not. It's very deep, very profound. Okay, so somebody says they love you, somebody loves you, but why they love you? That's because you have created an image. You have created an image of being a particular kind of person, which you really are not. So that love is not really worthy. It's not of any value. It is better if people hate you, but you are genuine. See, very, very important. And Krishna says that this mindset, where you become free from pretense is another type of hypocrisy only. And Krishna uses the word mithyachari in some other part of the Bhagavad Gita. And he says, when that goes away, then, your character becomes more transparent. And that aligns us closer to the truth. See, it's a very simple thing. If, let us say, I'll give you a very gross example. Let us say some person is very weak, and even if they look at a little bit of blood, they will faint and fall. There are people like that. Tell me, can such a person really become a successful soldier in the army? Not possible. Correct? This person can pretend to be a very brave person, but is he going to last in the army? Is he going to succeed in the army? No, because he's not aligned with what is required. Just like that, if our goal is to realize the truth, and if you are not true yourself, how will that happen? Because you are not aligned. And that is all Krishna is telling here. He says, you want to realize the truth, so first be truthful. And one of the ways of being truthful is adambitvam. No pretense, don't try to be somebody else just to get external validation. Then the next foundational virtue Krishna talks about is ahimsa. This everybody knows, non-violence. And the key thing that Krishna says is, non-violence is not the same as cowardice. Non-violence is not something that comes from a position of weakness. Like somebody comes in front of you who looks very strong, very powerful, and you just choose to run away. That is not non-violence, that is cowardice. What is non-violence? You are powerful. And you know that you can actually conquer the person in front of you, but you choose not to inflict harm. That is real non-violence. So in other words, ahimsa is a very empowering virtue that comes from a position of strength. So that is why Krishna first tells you to develop strength, inner strength, outer strength. He speaks about discipline, he speaks about all the other teachings, is to first make you strong so that you can practice ahimsa from a position of strength. And then there are some rules that say that violence is permissible only in situations where it can prevent a greater harm. In other words, a perfect example is a soldier's example again. Now, let us say the soldier knows that the enemy is going to come in and kill hundreds of people. Then it is okay for them to show violence to this person. In other words, the end result should be the greater good. That is where hinsa is permitted. Now, how to know when violence is okay and when it is not okay? That is what comes with discernment. And that takes time, that takes practice. And for that, we have to make sure that we are ourselves aligned with the virtues and truth and all of that, so that we can think clearly and make the right decisions. Okay, the next one is Kshanti. This is not Shanti, it is Kshanti. It starts with K, Kshanti. That Kshanti means tolerance. So, again, in chapter 2, Krishna spoke about Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada. He said, you should be able to tolerate pleasure, pain, heat, cold. What is the implication of this virtue? When you say you have to tolerate, if you think about it like a jnani, because we are talking about jnana here. So if you see, what does it mean? Toleration or being tolerant is what gives us the ability to forgive. How can you forgive anybody if you are not able to tolerate anything? So you have to be tolerant before you can become forgiving. Okay, so, and this forgiving is a very strong liberative force. Forgiving is very important because that frees us. Because that frees us from all the chains that we used to bind ourselves. Chains of anger and hatred and jealousy and so many other things. They are all chains, but they are binding us. So forgiveness is very, very important for our own upliftment and liberation. And we should also remember that, again, forgiveness is for our benefit. It is not that we are doing a favor on someone else by forgiving them. Some people will say, okay, I will forgive you, but they are not doing it for the other person. That forgiveness is for us because it frees us. Okay. Somebody very nicely said that non-forgiveness is like a poison that we drink expecting the other person to die. You know how irrational that sounds, but that is how human beings are. They hold on to this anger, they hold on to this, grudge, but it is eating you from within. So we need to really understand that, and that is why forgiveness is very, very extremely important. We have to practice that. So that is about Kshanti. Then he speaks about Arjava. Arjava is simplicity and straightforwardness, honesty. Honesty not just with others, but honesty with your own self. This also means no deceit, no hypocrisy, no double standards. If I do, it is pavitra. If you do, it is pap. That naturally comes to a lot of us because that is how ego works. Ego always makes it look like, rules apply to somebody else. So that is Arjava, simplicity, truthfulness. And that requires, again, humility. All of this, if you see, they all tie back to humility only. Now, simplicity. So here in Arjava, we are talking about being authentic and being honest. No false, no pretense, no deceit. And this is how your inner purity can shine. This is how your own aura can become bright and pure. Then the next one Krishna calls is Acharya Upasanam, which is service and respect for teachers. Guru Seva. Why? Because, again, that is just a means of acknowledging that knowledge is what Krishna says is going to free us, and it is the teacher who gives us that knowledge. So having that honesty and having that humility again, it again comes back to amanitvam. And so what Krishna is saying is you have to serve the Guru humbly without seeking personal gain, and that is how we prepare ourselves. And this is how this Krishna has said, and many saints have said repeatedly, that the transformation of knowledge from jnana to vijnana, in other words, the transformation of just intellectual knowledge becoming something that you can realize, that depends on us having the right. It is like saying you sow a seed, and the seed has to now sprout and become a plant. Now, what is required for it to sprout and become a plant? The soil has to be ready. It has to be the right soil, it has to be the right water, it has to be the right temperature, right sunlight. So it is all about preparing the field so that the seed can sprout. Just like that, all these virtues that Krishna is calling, including Acharya Upasanam, that is all to prepare our field, our kshetra, so that these virtues can sprout. See, makes sense. That is how this whole thing works. And then Krishna talks about shaucham, cleanliness. And cleanliness is not just using soap to wash your hands. Cleanliness is also internal cleanliness. External, yes, but internal also, which means don't let impurities stay. It's okay if impurities come in, but don't let them stay. And how do you get out impurities? The easiest way, Krishna has said, substitution. So if you have an impure thought, if you have an impure habit, and you are not able to deal with it, just substitute. Whenever a wrong thought comes, just say, oh, Hare Krishna, and let that substitute and replace. That's the technique Krishna has given. So that way you can maintain inner purity. External purity is also important. To keep your body clean, keep your house clean, very, very important. Because what happens when things are not clean around you? They generate tamasic energy. And if you are in a tamasic energy, it will rub on you. But you are trying to be sattvic. How can you be sattvic if you are all the time, surrounding yourself in tamas? That is why cleanliness is very, very important. The next one is thairyam. Thairyam means steadiness. What that means? That means staying committed and staying focused. Especially when you are having distractions, especially when you are having difficulties, that is when thairyam becomes more and more important. We talked about this in the 12th chapter where Krishna spoke about practice and determination. And someone very nicely said, that motivation is what helps us begin the journey. No? But it is conviction that will help us complete the journey. It's very true. It's very, very effective. So, otherwise, every distraction, today it's a little, I like the example of a gym because it applies to me also. Many times when January 1st comes, I say, I'm going to transform myself this year, you know. And the first, second, 2 weeks of January, I'm like, nobody can stop me, you know. But come February, slowly it's like, oh, today it's a little cold, you know. Or, oh no, last night I stayed late, so I think I can permit myself to sleep today. Million things comes. So that is what they say, that motivation can only get you started, but it is dhairyam that will help you finish, complete the journey. And what is our goal? Our goal is ultimate realization. So it's a very lofty goal. So for that, we need a tremendous amount of conviction to make sure that we stay on the path and not stop until we succeed. And then it is Atma Vinigraha. That is the last foundational virtue. Atma Vinigraha basically talks about discipline over mind and senses. Self-discipline. Very essential. And Krishna explains extensively the need for self-discipline. Throughout the Gita, he talks about discipline, self-control, mastering the senses, and all of that. Because otherwise, doesn't matter how many virtues you develop, you will again go back. You can develop a little bit of sthairyam, little bit of this, little bit of shocham. It's all okay, but you are not disciplined. You don't have self-discipline. Then what happens? All that goes. You cannot hold what you are creating. So discipline is extremely important. So these are the virtues. These virtues are foundational. What that means is, if we don't develop these virtues, then the next set of virtues is not easy for us to develop them or even appreciate them. Any questions so far? Is it all making sense, or is there any confusion anywhere? Everything clear? Okay. Does everybody understand the difference between Arjavam and Adambitvam? Who can tell me if they are same or if they are different?
I think they're similar, because you said both are simplicity, but honesty is there in Arjvam. Then we can shine. Straightforward.
Excellent. So maybe I'll spend just a couple of minutes to make sure that this is clear, because both Arjavam and Adambitvam, they may seem like they are slightly overlapping because they are both talking about truthfulness, sincerity. But where they differ is in the focus. What their focus basically. So Arjavam, when you say straightforwardness, it talks about honesty, sincerity in word and action. But there, the focus is on internal and external alignment. In other words, genuineness. What you think and what you speak and what you do. Are they all aligned? Or is your hand doing something and you're and you are talking something else? You see? So that is the focus. The focus is on being honest with ourselves and others, and having no ulterior motives or hidden agendas and all of that, because that means alignment is not there. And it is very, very important, because without that we cannot have purity of mind. So in short, your thought, your words and your actions, they all have to be aligned. So make that as the focus of Arjavam. Whereas when you talk about Adambitvam, it is talking more about the false pride. In other words, controlling the need to just get external validation and, avoid pretending to be somebody else. Don't try to appear more virtuous than what you really are. Be just who you are. Sometimes we feel the compulsion. We are like, oh, if people have to respect me, then I have to, behave like I'm a very, elevated person. And this comes. Everybody gets these thoughts. But we have to have a control over that. Because a person with adambitvam, they never try to impress other people with a false image. That is the focus of adambitvam. Because in adambitvam, the focus is being true to yourself always. That is the primary focus there. I hope now this makes it clear, the difference between arjavam and adambitvam.
Can we say that I should not be there? I means that for adambitvam.
That is amanitvam. It starts from there. So in amanitvam, there is no I. And only if you can practice amanitvam, only then you can do arjavam or adambitvam. Because as long as the I is always prominent, then these virtues won't even make sense. Because you are so hungry for that, feeding that ego, that nothing else will make sense. So once we finish these foundational virtues, then Krishna goes on to talk about the higher virtues and higher aspects of wisdom. You will see why, because I'm categorizing it this way, but you will yourself understand why some of them are higher and why they can come only when the foundational virtues are there. So the first one is vairagyam, which is detachment from sensory pleasures. Now tell me, can you have detachment if you don't have discipline? Not possible. That is why discipline came before in the foundational virtue. And so detachment does not mean that you are just renouncing life and becoming an uninteresting person. That's not the point. The point is, don't get into material attachments, because that create a bondage. And whenever your mind is getting too involved with material attachments, replace that with thoughts of Krishna. So that replacing is applicable in many situations to develop many virtues. The next is ahankara. Anahankara is absence of ego. It's very similar to amanitvam. In amanitvam, the focus is on humility, and in anahankara, the focus is on the ego, realizing whenever it gets active. Catching yourself whenever you are acting out of ahankar, like somebody is telling something for your own good, let us say. Somebody is coming and saying, no, don't cross the road like this, you will get hurt. But your ahankara, it perceives it as, how dare that person find fault with me? You don't have to tell me, I know what I am doing, So that is ahankar. But you need to be aware enough to catch your own self. That, hey, right now my reaction is based on ahankar, and get a grasp on that. That is the anahankara virtue. And then the next one is janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshanu darshanam. All it means is janma mrityu jara vyadi talks about the temporary nature of life, where you will be born, you will grow old, you will get disease, you will die. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So you have to contemplate. You really have to contemplate on this. You cannot, you means I will not say you, I would say we, because I'm also part of that. We cannot all the time live in this delusion that somehow bad things happen to other people only. Somehow only other people grow old. Somehow only other people get diseases. Other people only die. That is how our ego wants to think. The ego never lets you introspect and say that, when was the last time you told yourself, I am temporary, I am going to die, I am limited? Very rare. Correct? So that is the key here, because once we do this kind of introspection, that will strengthen our spiritual strength, the spiritual inclination, and that is what is important for us. Do you know, in olden days, in the I read it somewhere, so I cannot say 100% that this is what they used to do, but I read it somewhere in one particular story I read, that in olden days, in the Gurukula system, in some sampradaya, the best way for the Guru to help strengthen the conviction of his students and to make sure that they get rid of their fear of death, what they used to do, they will take their student to a smashan ghat, like a crematorium, and they will make them watch the entire thing alone, how a body comes in and how people are placing it, how people are burning it, and what is happening to the body. They make them see that the body actually entirely burns and it becomes ash, and at the end of the day, that person is now just a handful of ash. And so they make a student sit and watch all of it, because the idea is there, the pride comes under control. The student automatically tries to internalize that at the end I'm going to become ash, so why should I be so full of that I, so that amanitvam comes, anahankara comes, vairagya comes. And they also now are able to practice detachment, and they are also able to practice more conviction in the spiritual path, because they understand that if I am temporary, what is permanent, I need to align with that. See, that is what this is all about. And then the next one is Ashaktir and Anabhisvanga Putra Datra Grihadishu. Non-attachment to family, roles, positions. We need to understand that, relationships and responsibilities, they are important. It's not that you should just, give away all relationship. That's not what he's saying. It's just that they shouldn't define your identity. The very famous dialogue that happens in Hindi movies. तुम्हें पता नहीं मैं कौन हूँ मैं डॉन का बच्चा हूँ और मैं सुपर डॉन का भाई हूँ. So that is what this virtue says. Don't let your relationship become your identity, and that kind of attachment and that kind of bondage you should not have. And Krishna says you should focus on that realization that yourself is eternal and it is temporary. It is not temporary like all these other things, like your relatives are temporary, your relationships are temporary, your roles are temporary, but yourself is eternal. So Krishna only says do your duties, whatever duty that you have for any of your relationships, do it, but do it without any attachment. Because the other aspect of all of this is when we are able to do something for somebody without attachment, that is what becomes love. That pretty much is the difference between love and lust. We discussed that earlier also. Like if I give you a rose today, tomorrow you are also supposed to give me something. Otherwise, after 2 years, I'm very angry. I have been giving you, but you never gave me anything in return. So that is the kind of bondage, that is the kind of attachment Krishna says don't have. If you give a rose, give it just because, you care for the person and don't keep any attachment after that. And if you can do that, then that is what is love. And then the next virtue is Samachittvam, equanimity. It's very similar to Samatvam that we spoke about earlier in the second chapter again, where we should be able to handle the dualities of pleasure, pain, success, failure, all with a calm mind, because a calm mind is really, really important for spiritual growth. Without Samatvam, we cannot make progress, because without Samatvam, we will always be running. If we don't have Samatvam, we are always either in the mode of attachment or we are in the mode of aversion. In other words, either I like cold or I don't like cold. I like heat or I don't like heat. So if it is a little bit colder, you are either going to run towards it or you are going to run away from it. If you don't have Samatvam and calmness, and if you cannot handle all this heat, cold and pain, pleasure, calmly, we will be busy running in one direction or the other all our life. That's why that is so important. It keeps us centered. So it's just like you're going on a highway. Just imagine, 1 minute you are going and hitting the right side divider. On the next minute you are going and hitting the left side divider. And then after some time you are going and hitting a tree. I mean, how can you reach the destination? You can reach the destination only if you are right in the road, right? Not here, not there. You have to be in the road. And only then you can reach the destination quickly in one piece. Just like that, Samatvam keeps you centered. Samatvam makes sure that you are not banging your head against attachments and aversions all the time, and you are staying your course. Okay, these are the higher virtues. Here, any questions? Any kind of doubts that you have? Okay.
The third one you said, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, means just not being scared of death or realizing that it will happen to us.
Introspecting.
Okay.
Introspecting that, this everything is so temporary. Like Janam, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi is the reality, is the nature of sansara. And you reflect on that. And you reflect on that, and through that reflection, you develop your affinity for spiritual path. Realizing that that is the real path, that is the real eternity. Okay. Now, does everybody understand the difference between Kshanti and Samachittvam? Yes, Sandeep ji, you are saying something.
While Vairagyam is in higher virtue, it should also be in foundational virtue, right? I mean,
very good question, excellent question. So, what makes you attached to something?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you can
Ego.
introspect, exactly, you have the answer also with you already. And and when you control the ego, that is amanitvam, which is the first one. So that is why it is a higher virtue. And as long as we are under the influence of ego, we cannot be a vairagi. That's the whole. So Kshanti and Samachittvam. Who can tell what is difference between them? Or do you think it's the same? Krishna is just being redundant.
We have Kshanti, then we can be Samachittvam.
Okay.
Like if you're tolerant, then you can have those calmness in pleasure and pain.
Okay. So Kshanti was about tolerance. You are right. So let us just make sure there is no confusion here, because they also seem almost overlapping, but they differ again in the focus. So that's why I want to spend a minute again to make sure that we don't have any confusion here. So Kshanti is more about tolerance, as you rightly said, and being composed and calm in the face of challenges. So the focus is on tolerance and acceptance. So the focus of Kshanti is acceptance primarily. And doesn't matter if it is physical, emotional, social, doesn't matter. It is about just accepting the situations. That is what Rumi said very famously. He said, when we learn to accept the troubles given to us, the doors will open, because that aligns us. That, we let go of the friction, we let go of the resistance. And what does acceptance also mean? Acceptance also means not getting into resentment. Because if we are not in a mode of acceptance, then we get into a mode of resentment. And when you get into a mode of resentment, you cannot be forgiving. And if you cannot be forgiving, again, it comes in a circle. That means you are not tolerant. So then you are not able to practice Kshanti really, right? You see how it works. That is the whole focus, whole idea. Okay. In other words, Kshanti basically is when things don't go the way you want them to go, how do you react? That is Kshanti. Okay. Whereas Samachittvam is even-mindedness and equanimity. So being balanced and composed in both favorable and unfavorable circumstances, and keeping your mental state very calm, centered. That is the focus. The focus is, are you always centered, or are you going here and there? Are you going and hitting the dividers on both sides of the road, or are you staying in the center of the road? The focus is on emotional balance. That is the focus of Samachittvam. Don't lose your mental balance. See, that is the focus here. And in other words, don't get overly elated. Like something happens, like our team wins the match and you have to go and jump from your balcony because you are so overjoyed. Don't do that. Just like that, our team loses the match and then you cannot eat your food for 4 days and you're sulking. Don't do that also. That is Samachittvam. Primarily, it is keeping the mental balance. So Kshanti is about enduring difficulties, tolerating and accepting. Whereas Samachittvam is about staying balanced and calm while you are enduring. You are enduring and you are still all the time, God, why me? God, but why me? Why it should happen to me? So that is the primary difference between Samachittvam and Shanti. I hope now this makes it more clear. And just as a reminder, we studied this in Pragma 2. Anika is here. Anika ji summarized it earlier for us. Anika, Anika is there. Anika, do you remember you summarized Pragma 2 earlier for us when we were talking about Pragma 2? So you think you can summarize it for us today also?
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. Okay. So, Pragma 2 states that a calm mind is essential for liberation. So, learn to handle pain and pleasure calmly. So, when we cultivate a calm and balanced mind, we will be able to realize that our sense of inner well being is independent of the dualities of life. So, that is true freedom. Now, this is one of the most empowering realizations we should aim to have, and it rightfully sets us on the path to liberation.
Excellent. Please give her a round of applause. Na? So beautiful. Thank you so much, Anika ji. Very inspiring. So that's what we studied way back when we did the second pragma, and that aligns with Kshanti and Samachittvam that we are talking now, where Krishna goes a little bit deeper, and he kind of bifurcates that calmness itself into two aspects, into two areas of focus. Now we talk about the other quality that Krishna wants us to develop is the power of solitude. Krishna also says that we need to learn to be in solitude. Vivikta desa sevitam, he says, which is the inclination to seek out quiet places. You need calmness also. You need quietness also. You shouldn't all the time be with people, party, function. That means your mind is not really calm, and you are trying to, see, when we were children, especially people who went to school in India, there is a very famous example the teachers would always make us solve. So they will draw a line on the board, and they will ask you, how can you make it shorter without touching it? That used to be a trick question. And the answer basically is they draw a longer line next to it. And suddenly this line became shorter, and we will all say, wow, this teacher is so wise, But that is pretty much what we do. We have a lot of noise in our mind. We are not able to quieten it. So we go and seek more noise, louder noise. Because in the louder noise, our noise seems like it is calming down. You see? And that is why you shouldn't be there, because your noise is still there. It is not gone. It is only increasing day by day. You are only fooling yourself. So Krishna says, at least once in a while, we need to seek out silence, seek out solitude, seek out calmness, and spend some time that way. That is when your true spirituality will develop. Krishna is not saying give up all social interaction. All he's saying is find a balance, and don't use social interaction as a excuse to dampen the noise which is inside your mind. You have to deal with that noise, and you have to quieten it. How will you know how much noise is actually in your mind? You will know that only when you are in silence, no? Because that is the baseline. Only in silence you will really know how much noise is inside you, and then you can deal with it, you can quieten it. That's the whole idea. A very, very beautiful saying that I have really been fascinated since my childhood. I saw this somewhere in some advertisement. I don't even remember which advertisement, but I saw this when I was like in my teens. It says, loneliness is the sorrow of being alone, whereas solitude is the glory of being alone. You remember Buddha said there are two arrows. This is the second arrow. The first arrow, you are alone. The second arrow, does it make you feel miserable or does it make you feel elated? That is in your control. You choose whether you feel lonely or whether you feel I'm in solitude. No, let me practice, my spirituality for some time. You see? That is the whole message here. So what is the ultimate purpose? The goal of all of these qualities? The goal is to take us towards our ultimate, what we want. Self-realization. It helps us understand life's real deeper purpose, because true jnana is what takes us to self-realization and helps us identify that we are distinct from the body. We are not the body. We are not even the mind. We are definitely not the ego. We are not the body. We are not the mind. That comes through this kind of when you develop all of these virtues, that realization will actually come. So this is kind of a map, that Krishna has created for us. Krishna says, you are here, you want to go there, and this is the map, and these are the hurdles on the path, and these are the highways that you can use, and he has given the choice to you. Now he says, I have shown you, where your goal is. I've shown you how you can reach it. I've also shown you what is the wrong way to go. I've also shown you what is the hard way to go. And he says, now I'm giving you the map and I'm giving you the free will. Now you choose what you want to do. Just like Google Maps will never force you to say that, no, you have to go. Google Maps is only say that if you go from here, it is faster. But if you go from here, it will be slower. But it is entirely up to you. And that is exactly what Krishna is doing here. And then we can quickly summarize the 20 crucial virtues. So we have discussed 20 if it didn't feel like that. So I'll quickly run through it. I'll also share the notes with you. Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantir, Arjavam, Acharya Upasanam, Shaucham, Stairyam, Atma Vinigraha, and then Indriyarteshu, that is Vairagyam, sensory detachment, Anahankaram, Janam Mrityu Jara Vyadi, Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam, then Ashaktir, which is again material detachment. Then we spoke about this Putradara Grahadishu, which is detachment from relationships. Nityam Samachittvam. And then we spoke about basically bhakti that we already spoke earlier, how we have to develop bhakti. Then we spoke about Vivikta Desa Sevitam, embracing solitude. Then we spoke about social detachment, which is also known as Jana Samsadi, Arathir Jana Samsadi. Then we spoke about how we need to be practicing constancy in spiritual knowledge, Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam, and then Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam, which is seeking spiritual knowledge. So these are all the 20 virtues. I'll share the notes also. And then Krishna speaks about the 3 aspects of knowledge, just like he spoke about Kshetra and Kshetragya, which was field and the knower of field. When it comes to Jnana, he speaks about 3 aspects. One is Jnana, that is the knowledge itself. One is Neyam, which is the object of knowledge. In other words, what are we trying to learn? And the third is Netha, who is the knower of this knowledge. So it is Jnana, Neyam, and Netha. These are the 3 aspects. They are always interconnected. And so after talking about Kshetra, Kshetragya and Jnana, we just spoke about Jnana. Then Krishna is talking about Neyam, which is the object of our knowledge, object of divine knowledge. Who can tell me what is the object of divine knowledge?
God realization.
So what is the object of God realization?
God himself.
Exactly. So Neyam pretty much is Brahman. So that is the object of our Jnana. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And Krishna says how that leads to immortality and liberation, and of course, and here is where something very powerful comes, where Swami Ranganathananda, he is a very, very elevated Advaita Acharya, and he very beautifully explains that, see, in the material sciences, when we are learning about something material, let us say you learn about an atom and you understand an atom completely. But just by understanding an atom completely, do you become an atom? No. Right? Whereas, when you understand Brahman completely, in other words, you get to realize Brahman, you become Brahman. That is the fundamental difference between material knowledge and spiritual divine knowledge. Ranganatha, he uses a very, very beautiful example where he says that it is like a block of salt that is trying to realize how the ocean is. So how can it realize how the ocean is? It has to touch the ocean, right? Notice touching the ocean, and before it knows what is going on, does it not dissolve? In other words, by the time it realizes what the ocean is, it has become the ocean. Just like that, the Advaita Acharyas say that by the time we realize Brahman, we become Brahman. Very powerful. Why we are talking about that? This is another motivation for why we should really understand what is jnana, what is neyam, and what is neta, because that takes us on the path to becoming one with that Brahman. See, this is where I have taken some teachings from Swami Vivekananda's works. Swami Vivekananda was probably one of the most brilliant philosophers, spiritualists, and experts in Vedanta. He used to talk in such a powerful, effective way that he can convey the message. So I thought, it will help if I bring some of that here to explain this better. So Vivekananda, he uses a very methodical approach, and he says first, each soul is potentially divine. He lays a very clear and inspiring vision of the journey. So just like Krishna is giving us a map, Vivekananda is also giving us a map of the spiritual journey, where he starts by saying each soul is divine. And this is what Krishna also taught us, where Krishna also said that the soul is eternal. And that is the foundation of our understanding of spiritual nature. And Vivekananda says that every individual, because every soul is divine, every individual is inherently divine. It is not that we have to become divine. We are already divine, but we just have accumulated a lot of non-divine stuff. We just have to get rid of that. That is why Krishna also talks about virtues. Basically, he's saying get rid of all that thing. Get rid of pride, get rid of ahankar, get rid of attachment. Because those are all the things that are, hiding our divinity. Okay, that is the first. Second, then Vivekananda says, first, you should know that you are divine. And second, he says the goal is to manifest this divinity. Okay. Because once we understand that divinity is within us, that we are divine, the question comes, how do I bring it out? How do I realize this? And Vivekananda's answer is aligned with Krishna's teachings, where Vivekananda says that is the goal of life. That is the goal of all spiritual practice. No? And he says you can do that through bhakti, you can do that through karma, and you can do that through jnana. Now you raise your hands if anyone can tell me what is the longest path of these three, jnana, bhakti, and karma. Okay, I have one person who knows. Two. Ekansh, which is the longest?
Guruji, jnana.
Excellent. Krishna himself has said that through jnana, it will take you countless lifetimes. But you can still reach. That's your choice. Obviously, bhakti was the shortest, so karma has to be the middle path. But Krishna also said that karma is indirect path. Who remembers why karma is indirect? Just raise your hands. Okay, Chitraji, why is karma indirect?
Because in doing karmas, you get attached to the rituals part of it.
Okay. Excellent. She spoke about the why it takes us away, but yeah, Sulataji.
Because, with karma, when Krishna spoke about Nishkama karma, it will eventually purify and strengthen our bhakti. So why not directly develop?
Exactly. We discussed that last week. So karma becomes spiritual only when we practice Nishkama karma. That is what Krishna said. And Krishna said that when we practice Nishkama karma, it develops our bhakti. But then bhakti is what then takes us to the final goal. So that is why Krishna says karma is an indirect path, because through karma you develop bhakti, and then through bhakti you go there. Krishna says, why don't you directly practice bhakti? That's a direct path. Excellent. So that is what Vivekananda ji also says about the second aspect. First, know your divinities. Second, manifest this divinity, and you should know that you have these three paths available, and choose bhakti because that is the shortest path. And know this truth and get liberated. That's what Krishna says. And the secondary role of rituals and doctrines, where Swami Vivekananda ji, he says that these rituals, these doctrines, these dogmas, these books, these temples, these forms, he says they are all secondary. When they provide a structure, they provide guidance, they provide some help, but they are only tools. We should not forget that they are tools, and don't get attached to the tool. is the whole idea. It is like a sculptor who is given a, very beautiful hammer, effective hammer, and a very sharp chisel. And he starts worshipping the hammer and chisel every day, putting, flowers and doing arti. He's getting so attached. But is that what he is supposed to use them to create that beautiful idol? That was his job, right? Just like that, Vivekananda ji says that all these doctrines and temples and idols and all of this, they are all tools. And you should never lose focus of what the goal is and don't get attached to the tool. Very powerful, very simple. And then the field and the knower. Again, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Vivekananda ji also talks about that, where he says the mind and the body, they are part of the field, which is temporary. However, the soul is part of the knower. It is part of the Kshetragya. And one who is aware of this is able to develop spiritually faster. And then he is also asking us to identify with that eternal aspect of ourselves. In other words, Vivekananda ji also says the same thing. He says, know the difference between Kshetra, Kshetragya, know the difference between that which is temporary and which is not temporary. And once you have known that, align more with that which is not temporary. Don't get hung up on these temporary things. And then he says, becoming Brahman then. That is a powerful teaching again, which is building up on this idea, and that says that the same thing that Ranganathananda ji said. I don't know who, I'm pretty sure that, this is documented. Vivekananda ji's work is documented, and that contains the same example. I don't know. But basically, Vivekananda ji says the same thing. He says that, know that once you realize Brahman, you become Brahman. Very beautifully, he's summarizing it. He's saying that again, he's saying spiritual knowledge is not just about accumulating facts, but it is about experiencing the truth. So it is about the transformation of the self into the divine. That is the goal. And he says that pretty much is the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. And that pretty much is the philosophy of Swami Vivekananda's work. If we understand this, we will pretty much get an idea of what Vivekananda's work is all about. This is what it is. So in essence, Vivekananda ji, he says, very powerful message. He says, he's pretty much reinforcing what Krishna said. So he's saying each soul is already divine, but then this divinity is hidden or obscured by ignorance and attachment and ego. And the goal of all spiritual practice is to remove all these distractions and obstacles so that the divinity can shine. And by cultivating humility, non-violence, simplicity, devotion, just like Krishna advises, we purify the kshetra, the field. And once we purify the field, we are able to realize the kshetragya. And that realization leads to liberation, which is the ultimate freedom. I have tried to go a little deep as well as keep it simple and cohesive. I made an attempt to make sure that this concept doesn't overwhelm you, but at the same time, you are exposed to all the different things that Krishna taught. Because Kshetragya, this, as I said, it is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga can get a little, complicated and technical. So for example, the difference between Kshanti and Samachittvam, if you see, those things are coming now. They didn't come earlier. Earlier, we just said Samatvam. But when we go to Jnana Yoga, then we dissect that also. And we say, there are these many types of Samatvam, so on and so forth. So you need to be aware. You need to understand what Krishna is saying. At the same time, keeping your eyes on the goal. Why we are reading it is very important. So I'm open to feedback. I'm open to any questions. Is there something we can do better or... So we will continue this interesting journey again in the next session. Sulataji, you want to say something?
Sorry, Guruji, I might be wrong, sounding... when we try to be in the path of bhakti, like when we try to get attached, connected to the yoke of God consciousness, will not all these virtues come to us? Like, I know, as you said, it's a map, and if we follow this, it will be easier for us to be focused. But will
Yeah. See, it is like, how we push start a car. When a car is not, when the engine is not starting, we have 4 people push the car. And once the car is pushed, the same car can carry the same 4 people much further. You see? So just like that, these virtues are like that, pushing that car, getting you into the mode of bhakti. And then once you get into the bhakti, then of course these virtues will also grow. But somewhere you have to, like if somebody is full of vikaras and full of attachment and full of ego and full of pride, it is like a soil that is not ready. Doesn't matter how many seeds you sow, nothing is going to grow. So the bhakti has to come, a push start is required. So some of these virtues need to be cultivated, at least amanitvam compulsory, because that is what helps us even ask what is the right thing to do. As long as you don't have humility, you will always think you already know what is the right thing to do. Correct? So that is the whole idea. The idea is you cultivate virtues so that you can get on the path of devotion, then be consistent in devotion, then these virtues will automatically grow. And then they will take you through the highway. I hope that makes sense, Sulataji.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Krishna.
Very good question. Was it too much? Do you think this much is okay for a session? Okay.
Guruji, it was a lot of things together, but I think if we go through the notes again and try to fit in mind, then we can start working on it.
Definitely. It is. It needs to be reiterated. We need to study it again and again. We need to internalize it, and then it will all pay off. The very important takeaway, I would say, if you want to just look at it at a very high level, the very important thing is to understand the hierarchy of virtues itself. In other words, first understand what are all the virtues Krishna wants us to develop, then understand out of these virtues which come first. In other words, where should I focus? Where should I start? Somewhere I have to start. And then once you start, then you will know that step by step you can work on the other ones. Like you cannot directly come and say, I'm going to become a Vairagi. It's not going to work, So that is the whole idea. So this is like a map. It's like a stepwise plan. And with that, we can make progress. And also this whole thing of conviction and consistency. If you see how many times this repeats, very important. And finally, not losing track of our goal. Okay, so I know it was a lot of things, but it will make sense. I'll share the notes as quickly as possible. And I really appreciate each one of you. I am grateful to all of you for your company, because seeing you so interested, gives me the motivation to myself be more structured in my delivery. I don't just come and talk random. I try to myself be very methodical. That is because of you. So I'm grateful to all of you. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna. And see you all in the next session. So I've sent a poll in Telegram. It's okay. I mean, if you think you all want to celebrate Diwali and you want a break, I'm okay. But I just need to know. It shouldn't happen that people want to attend and I'm canceling, because I don't need a break. But if you need a break, you should let me know. And I will make an informed decision that way. Okay? And I made it anonymous, so I will not even know who said cancel the session. So Bindas, you can say what you want to say. Okay, Hare Krishna. See you all in the next session.
Guruji, 2 of us are wearing yellow today. So can we get a group picture?
Just 1 second.